2 hours earlier, before the phones were recording and before anyone inside Motivational realized how costly a single moment of arrogance could become, Maggie Bennett stepped onto Fifth Avenue, carrying nothing more than a small leather purse and a folded note in her pocket. The city moved around her in its usual rhythm. Yellow taxis drifted through traffic. Office workers hurried along the sidewalks. Tourists stopped to photograph towering buildings that had become invisible to the people who passed them every day. Maggie paused across the street from the boutique and looked up at the elegant gold lettering above the entrance. For a moment, she smiled. This visit was supposed to be simple. In 3 weeks, she and William would celebrate their 15th wedding anniversary. Despite the attention surrounding William's success, the two of them had always preferred quiet celebrations. No extravagant parties. No magazine features. No social media announcements. Just time together. Earlier that morning, Maggie had found an old photograph from their first apartment. They had been standing in a tiny kitchen, laughing beside a second-hand dining table they could barely afford. Back then, neither of them had imagined the life they would eventually build. The photograph reminded her that some gifts carried meaning far beyond their price tags. That was why she had come to Motivational. The boutique carried a limited edition handbag that William had once admired while walking past a display window months earlier. He had mentioned it casually and forgotten about it the next day. Maggie had not forgotten. She remembered everything that mattered. As she entered the boutique, cool air and the scent of expensive perfume welcomed her inside. Crystal chandeliers cast warm reflections across polished marble floors. Classical music drifted softly through hidden speakers. Every detail had been designed to create an atmosphere of exclusivity. Several sales associates stood near the displays, speaking quietly with well-dressed customers. Maggie glanced around, expecting someone to greet her. Nobody did. One associate looked directly at her before quickly turning away. Another approached a customer who had entered after her. Maggie ignored it. She had experienced similar moments before. Wealth often attracted assumptions, but simplicity confused people. Instead, she wandered toward the display featuring the anniversary collection. The handbag she wanted rested beneath soft lighting inside a glass case. Elegant. Timeless. Exactly the kind of gift William would never purchase for himself. Maggie studied the details carefully. The craftsmanship was remarkable. A small smile appeared on her face. She could already imagine his reaction. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Not a single employee offered assistance. Nearby, she noticed another customer being shown multiple products by 2 enthusiastic associates. The contrast was impossible to miss. Yet Maggie remained patient. Patience had become one of her greatest strengths over the years. Success had taught her that character revealed itself most clearly when people believed nobody important was watching. Eventually, a young sales associate named Emily glanced toward her several times. Unlike the others, Emily seemed uncomfortable. She appeared ready to help but hesitated whenever she looked toward the manager's office. Then the office door opened. Vanessa Clark emerged, confident and composed, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Her eyes scanned the boutique with practiced efficiency before settling on Maggie. In that instant, a subtle expression crossed Vanessa's face. It lasted less than a second, but it revealed everything. Judgment, assumption, dismissal. And although neither woman knew it yet, that single glance had already set the entire afternoon in motion. Vanessa approached with the polished smile she reserved for situations she believed she controlled completely. The smile looked professional from a distance, but there was something cold beneath it. Maggie noticed immediately. Years of meeting people from every walk of life had taught her to recognize the difference between genuine courtesy and carefully disguised contempt. Vanessa stopped beside the glass display and folded her hands neatly in front of her. "Can I help you?" she asked. The words sounded polite. The tone did not. Maggie returned the smile. "Yes, actually. I would like to see the anniversary edition handbag." She pointed toward the display case. Vanessa glanced at the bag and then back at Maggie. Her eyes briefly traveled over the sweater, the jeans, and the worn sneakers. It was a quick look, but it revealed everything. "That collection is extremely exclusive," Vanessa replied. "We usually reserve demonstrations for serious buyers." Maggie remained calm. "I understand. I would still like to see it." Vanessa tilted her head slightly. "Do you know the price?" The question hung in the air. A nearby customer looked over. Then another. Conversations began slowing throughout the boutique. Maggie nodded. I am aware that it is expensive. Vanessa smiled again. Expensive can mean different things to different people. A few customers exchanged amused glances. The young associate, Emily, shifted uncomfortably behind the counter. Maggie kept her voice steady. I would still like to see the handbag. Instead of opening the display, Vanessa stepped closer. Perhaps I can show you some of our more accessible collections. She gestured toward a section near the back of the store. The message was clear. Maggie looked directly at her. No, thank you. I came specifically for that one. For the first time, irritation flashed across Vanessa's face. She was accustomed to people accepting her judgments without question. Ma'am, she said, lowering her voice while somehow making it easier for everyone nearby to hear. This particular piece costs more than many people spend on a vehicle. The boutique grew quieter. Customers were openly watching now. One man paused while examining a watch display. Two women standing near the entrance stopped talking entirely. Maggie could feel every eye in the room. Still, she refused to become angry. That only seemed to frustrate Vanessa more. I appreciate the information, Maggie replied. I would still like to purchase it. A hush settled over the boutique. Vanessa let out a short laugh. Purchase it, she repeated. Today? Maggie nodded. Yes. Several customers smiled. Someone quietly chuckled. Vanessa looked around as if inviting the room to share in the joke. Then she turned back toward Maggie. Perhaps before discussing purchases, we should discuss qualifications. Emily's eyes widened. Even she seemed shocked that the manager had said it aloud. Maggie felt a familiar disappointment settle in her chest. Not because of the insult itself. Because Vanessa genuinely believed she was being reasonable. That was often the saddest part. People convinced themselves that prejudice was simply good judgment. And as Vanessa prepared to push the humiliation even further, she had no idea that every assumption she was making was bringing her closer to a mistake she would never forget. Vanessa folded her arms and glanced around the boutique as if seeking approval from the audience she had quietly assembled. Judging by the expressions around her, she found exactly what she wanted. Curious faces, amused smiles, silent agreement. The atmosphere had shifted from luxury shopping to public spectacle. Qualifications matter here, Vanessa said. Our clients understand the value of what we offer. Maggie met her gaze calmly. And what exactly qualifies someone to be your client? For a brief moment, Vanessa seemed caught off guard by the question. Then her confidence returned. Experience, lifestyle, familiarity with luxury brands. Several customers nodded subtly. One woman carrying multiple designer shopping bags smirked and whispered something to her companion. More quiet laughter followed. Emily stood frozen behind the counter. She looked increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation continued, but she remained silent. Vanessa took another step forward. Maison Etoile serves a very particular clientele. We pride ourselves on maintaining a certain environment. Maggie understood the implication immediately. The environment Vanessa referred to had nothing to do with elegance. It had everything to do with appearances. I see, Maggie replied softly. And you have decided I do not belong in that environment. Vanessa smiled. I am simply making an assessment based on the information available to me. The statement sounded professional enough to hide the prejudice underneath. Maggie almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Around them, more customers had stopped shopping entirely. A man near the entrance quietly lifted his phone. Another customer followed. Then another. The confrontation had become entertainment. Vanessa noticed none of it. She was too focused on proving a point. Perhaps, Maggie said, the information available to you is incomplete. A hush settled over the boutique. Vanessa laughed. That is always possible. But in my experience, first impressions are usually accurate. The words lingered in the air. Maggie thought about all the doors that had opened for people because they looked successful. She thought about all the doors that had closed for people who did not. Wealth had taught her many lessons. One of the most important was that assumptions often revealed more about the observer than the person being observed. Vanessa gestured toward the exit. I think it would be best if we ended this conversation. Maggie glanced once more toward the anniversary handbag displayed behind the glass. She had entered the boutique hoping to buy a gift. Now she was witnessing something else entirely. A test of character. And not her own. Emily finally took a hesitant step forward. Manager Clark, she said carefully, Perhaps we could simply show her the bag. Vanessa's expression hardened instantly. That will not be necessary. Emily lowered her eyes and retreated. The room grew even quieter. The classical music playing overhead seemed strangely distant. Maggie could feel dozens of people watching her decision. Would she argue? Would she defend herself? Would she reveal who she was? Instead, she simply picked up her purse. That choice seemed to disappoint some of the spectators. They had hoped for drama. They had hoped for a scene. Maggie gave them neither. She only offered Vanessa a calm look that somehow felt more powerful than anger. "Very well," she said. "Thank you for making your position clear." Vanessa nodded with obvious satisfaction. She believed the matter was finished. She believed she had protected the store. She believed she had won. And that was exactly why she failed to notice the first customer quietly uploading a video clip to social media. The recording had already begun its journey far beyond the boutique's marble walls. Maggie walked toward the entrance without rushing. The marble floor reflected the chandelier light beneath her feet, while dozens of eyes followed her every step. Behind her, Vanessa stood with the quiet satisfaction of someone convinced she had protected the reputation of the boutique. Several customers returned to their conversations, already treating the incident as a finished story. They could not have been more mistaken. As Maggie approached the door, Emily hurried forward. "Ma'am," she said softly, careful not to attract Vanessa's attention, "I am sorry about what happened." Maggie paused and offered a gentle smile. "Thank you." Emily hesitated before speaking again. "You were treated unfairly." Maggie looked at the young associate for a moment. There was sincerity in her eyes. Integrity, too. Qualities that seemed increasingly rare inside the boutique. "Sometimes people show you who they are without realizing it," Maggie replied. "The important thing is what you choose to do after you see it." Emily nodded slowly. Before she could respond, Vanessa's voice echoed across the showroom. "Emily, please return to your station." The young associate immediately stepped back. Maggie pushed open the glass door and entered the afternoon sunlight. The city noise felt strangely peaceful after the tension inside. She took a deep breath and walked toward a nearby bench overlooking the avenue. Behind her, the boutique resumed normal operations. Or at least Vanessa believed it had. What she did not know was that the first video clip had already been viewed more than 2,000 times. The customer who uploaded it had added a simple caption: "Luxury store manager humiliates customer based on appearance." The reactions began immediately. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. People debated the manager's behavior. Others shared similar experiences. Some questioned whether the full story was known. The numbers continued climbing. Meanwhile, inside the boutique, Vanessa proudly recounted the incident to a pair of wealthy customers. "You have to maintain standards," she explained. "The wrong people create the wrong atmosphere." The customers nodded politely, though neither seemed quite as impressed as Vanessa expected. Emily listened from across the room, increasingly uncomfortable. She had replayed the conversation in her mind several times already. Each time, it sounded worse. Outside, Maggie sat quietly on the bench and pulled out her phone. A text message appeared almost immediately. William had sent it 15 minutes earlier. "Meeting ended early. How is the anniversary mission going?" Maggie smiled despite everything that had happened. She typed a brief response. "More interesting than expected." A few seconds later, her phone rang. William's familiar voice answered the moment she picked up. "That does not sound promising." Maggie laughed softly. "Let us just say I did not buy the gift." There was a pause. William knew her well enough to hear the hidden meaning beneath her calm tone. "What happened?" he asked. Maggie looked back toward the boutique across the street. Through the glass windows, she could still see Vanessa moving confidently through the showroom. Completely unaware. Completely certain she had made the correct decision. "I will tell you when you get here," Maggie said. "How far away are you?" William glanced at the clock in his vehicle. "About an hour." Maggie smiled and ended the call. Across the avenue, the boutique sparkled beneath the afternoon sun, looking as flawless as ever. But appearances had a way of hiding the truth. And within the next 60 minutes, everything Vanessa believed about that day was about to change. The next hour passed very differently for the two women. Across the street, Maggie remained calm. She spent part of the time walking through a nearby park, enjoying the crisp afternoon air and the golden sunlight filtering between the buildings. Anyone passing her would have assumed she was simply another New Yorker enjoying a quiet day. Nobody would have guessed that several members of the character did. Back inside Maison Étoile, Vanessa continued her day with growing confidence. The incident had become one of her favorite topics of conversation. She retold the story several times, each version making her sound more justified than the last. "You have to protect the brand," she explained to a customer while arranging a display. "People see one thing out of place, and suddenly the entire atmosphere changes." The customer offered a polite smile, but seemed distracted by her phone. Similar reactions began appearing throughout the boutique. More customers than usual were checking their screens. Some exchanged strange looks. Others whispered quietly among themselves. Vanessa noticed none of it. Her attention remained fixed on maintaining the image she valued so highly. Meanwhile, the video continued spreading online. 10,000 views became 50,000. 50,000 became 100,000. Comments poured in from every corner of the country. Many viewers recognized the boutique. Others criticized the treatment shown in the clip. A few former customers even went. Pedestrians filled the sidewalks. Then, just as the clock approached the 1-hour mark, a sleek black SUV turned onto the avenue and slowed in front of the boutique. Its glossy finish reflected the city skyline like polished glass. Several people on the sidewalk noticed immediately. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Even inside the boutique, customers began looking toward the windows. The vehicle came to a smooth stop directly in front of the entrance. Vanessa stepped out of her office, annoyed by the growing distraction. She glanced toward the street and frowned. Something about the scene felt different. Important. The rear passenger door opened slowly. And without realizing it, every person inside the boutique had just become part of a moment they would remember for years. The man who stepped out of the SUV carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that could never be purchased. William Bennett adjusted the sleeve of his navy jacket and looked toward the boutique entrance. He was not surrounded by assistants. He was not accompanied by security. He did not need any of those things. His reputation arrived before he did. Several pedestrians immediately recognized him. One man stopped walking mid-step. Another glanced twice before pulling out his phone. Inside the boutique, whispers began spreading from customer to customer. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. The face looked familiar. Very familiar. Then realization struck. Her expression changed instantly. William Bennett was one of the most respected business leaders in the country. Financial magazines featured him regularly. News networks sought his opinions. His companies employed thousands of people. More importantly for Vanessa, he was known to have connections with several luxury retail groups across the nation. The atmosphere inside the boutique shifted. Conversations disappeared. Customers moved closer to the windows. Even Emily looked stunned. William walked toward the entrance with calm, measured steps. The glass doors opened automatically as he entered. Every employee immediately straightened. "Bennett," she said warmly. "What an unexpected pleasure. Welcome to Maison Étoile." William nodded politely, but did not return the smile. His eyes moved through the showroom as though searching for someone. "Thank you," he replied. "I am looking for my wife." The room went silent. Vanessa blinked. "Your wife?" she repeated. William nodded. "Maggie Bennett. She visited this boutique earlier today." A hush fell across the showroom. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Several customers exchanged shocked looks. The manager's carefully practiced confidence began to crack. "Maggie Bennett?" Vanessa asked slowly. "Your wife is Maggie Bennett." William studied her expression. He noticed the sudden tension in her posture. He noticed the color leaving her face. Most importantly, he noticed that nobody seemed surprised by the name except her. Years of leading companies had taught him how to read a room. Something had happened here. "Yes," William answered. "I believe she spent some time in your store this afternoon." Nobody spoke. Even the music seemed quieter. Vanessa searched desperately for the right response. "I am sure there has been some misunderstanding," she said. Her voice sounded noticeably less confident now. William remained calm. "Perhaps. I would like to hear about it." Before Vanessa could answer, another voice came from near the entrance. "You could start by watching the video." Every head turned. A customer standing near the front counter held up a phone screen. The clip had already accumulated hundreds of thousands of views. The title was visible from several feet away. "Luxury Boutique Manager Humiliates Customer Based on Appearance." Vanessa stared at the screen as though it belonged to someone else. The room froze. For the first time that day, she realized she was no longer controlling the story. And she still had no idea that an even bigger revelation was only minutes away. Maggie entered the boutique a few moments later. She walked through the same glass doors she had exited an hour earlier, wearing the same sweater, the same jeans, and the same calm expression. Nothing about her appearance had changed, yet everything about the room had. Conversations stopped instantly. Employees stood motionless. Customers who had laughed earlier now avoided eye contact. Vanessa stared as Maggie approached William's side. The reality of the situation was finally becoming impossible to ignore. William offered his wife a warm smile. "Better?" he asked quietly. Maggie nodded. "Much." Several customers exchanged confused glances. They expected anger. They expected confrontation. Instead, they were witnessing two people speaking as though they were meeting for dinner. That quiet confidence unsettled the room far more than any outburst could have. Vanessa stepped forward. "Mrs. Bennett, I believe there has been a terrible misunderstanding." Maggie looked at her for a moment. Not with resentment, not with triumph, simply with curiosity. "A misunderstanding?" she asked gently. Vanessa swallowed. "I was not aware of who you were." The words escaped before she could stop them. The moment they did, she realized her mistake. Maggie tilted her head slightly. "Exactly." A hush fell over the boutique. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The answer landed harder than any accusation. Vanessa's face drained of color. Because for the first time, she understood the real issue. The problem had never been that she failed to recognize an important customer. The problem was that she believed respect should depend on recognition in the first place. Before she could respond, the front doors opened once more. 3 sharply dressed individuals entered carrying tablets and portfolios. The oldest among them, a silver-haired executive in an immaculate charcoal suit, walked directly toward Maggie. Several employees immediately recognized him. He was Daniel Harper, chairman of the retail group's board. The room seemed to freeze again. Daniel stopped in front of Maggie and extended his hand respectfully. "Good afternoon, Ms. Bennett." Maggie shook his hand. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Vanessa felt her stomach drop. The chairman knew her personally. Not through William. Through Maggie. Daniel glanced around the showroom before speaking. The board reviewed the situation immediately after the video surfaced. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Vanessa struggled to process what she was hearing. One of the other executives opened a tablet and displayed several documents. Daniel continued, "There is something many people here do not know. 6 months ago, the investment partnership that acquired controlling interest in our parent company was founded and led by Ms. Bennett." The room went completely silent. Even William smiled faintly. He already knew what was coming. Several employees looked at Maggie with disbelief. Vanessa stared as though the world had shifted beneath her feet. She had assumed William was the powerful one. She had assumed he was the reason everyone suddenly cared. She had been wrong. Maggie was not standing beside power. She was power. The chairman's voice remained calm. "Every major strategic decision involving this company ultimately passes through her office." Vanessa felt her knees weaken. The realization arrived all at once. The woman she had judged. The customer she had dismissed. The person she had ordered out of the boutique. She was one of the most influential people connected to the entire organization. And suddenly, the silence inside Maison Etoile felt louder than any words ever could. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Vanessa stood motionless as the weight of everything settled around her. The elegant showroom that had felt so comfortable only an hour earlier now seemed impossibly quiet. Every customer, every employee, every executive in the room understood the same thing. The issue had never been money. It had never been status. It had never even been authority. The issue had been respect. Daniel Harper slowly closed the portfolio in his hands and looked toward Maggie. "The board is prepared to take immediate action," he said carefully. "However, we wanted to hear your thoughts first." Several executives nodded in agreement. Vanessa lowered her eyes. She already knew what most people expected. Termination. Public accountability. A dramatic ending. After everything that had happened, nobody would have questioned it. Maggie glanced around the room. She saw nervous employees, embarrassed customers, Emily standing quietly near the counter. She even saw genuine regret on Vanessa's face. For the first time all day, then she looked back at Daniel. "I do have a recommendation," she said. The room held its breath. "Go ahead," Daniel replied. Maggie folded her hands calmly. "Do not make this about one person." Surprise spread across several faces. Vanessa looked up. William smiled faintly beside her. He had expected nothing less. Maggie continued, "If removing one manager solved this problem, it would have been solved years ago. This happened because people were taught to measure customers by appearances instead of character." Nobody interrupted. "Create training programs. Change the culture. Make sure every employee understands that dignity is not reserved for people who look wealthy." The silence deepened. Daniel slowly nodded. "That can be arranged." Maggie smiled. "Then that is what I would like to see happen." Across the showroom, Emily's eyes brightened. Several employees looked visibly relieved. Even some customers appeared moved by the response. Vanessa stared at Maggie in disbelief. After everything she had said, after every assumption she had made, Maggie had chosen improvement over revenge. Eventually, Vanessa stepped forward. Her voice trembled slightly. "Mrs. Bennett, I owe you an apology." The room became still once again. "I judged you before I knew anything about you," Vanessa said. "And even worse, I believed I was justified in doing it." Maggie listened quietly. Vanessa swallowed hard. "I was wrong." For the first time all afternoon, there was no arrogance in her voice. No performance. No audience. Just honesty. Maggie nodded gently. "Then learn from it." That was all she said. No lecture. No humiliation. No victory speech. Just 4 simple words. Yet somehow they carried more weight than anything else spoken that day. Later that evening, as the executives departed and customers slowly returned to their shopping, the atmosphere inside the boutique felt different. Lighter somehow. More human. Outside, the city continued moving beneath the fading sunlight. William offered his arm, and Maggie accepted it with a smile. Together they began walking down the avenue. The anniversary gift had never been purchased, yet neither of them seemed disappointed. Behind them, people would remember the incident for years. Not because a powerful woman had revealed her status, not because a video had gone viral, but because when given every opportunity to embarrass those who had judged her, she chose grace instead. And that day, everyone inside that boutique learned a lesson no luxury price tag could ever teach. Wealth may open doors. Status may impress strangers. But character is revealed by how we treat people when we believe they have nothing to offer us. A hush lingered in the showroom long after Maggie left. And for the first time, everyone understood what true dignity looked like.